Okay, welcome. Thanks, Tony. Welcome to Lunch with Stormy. Today, I have a repeat guest. It's the best. Naomi Seligman, who I spoke to during the Liberty Lunch when I was running for office in Utah, the small District 21, which led me to know how intense, and I just want to say captured and systemic that politics are. If it's affecting District 21 in Tooele, Utah, it's affecting at higher levels more than we can actually even imagine as citizens. That's the truth. That's what I learned. So Naomi and I spoke during that time because I found this insight into politics that was like more than I knew, and I've got a business background and everything's, good with me. It wasn't like I was really green behind the ears stepping into something. And then I realized I was green behind the ears. So Naomi joined me and we talked a lot about the world today. And at the time she was getting ready to do a TED Talk that we'll talk about. Her past involves so much that influences America and our society that we're going to get into it. But just a little brief thing. She's nationally known as a strategic communications leader, women's rights advocate, and social innovator. She's taken organizations and leaders and makes them powerhouses of influence and looking for justice along the way for every one of her clients. She has hard-hitting strategies that put people on the map for 3 decades running. Her career has spanned from both coasts and includes Washington, D.C., and I don't know if it was most recently. She's got her own company that we'll talk about, but she was the director of communications for the L.A. Mayor, Eric Garcetti, and she's recently hit the headlines with something that is super important that we all need to wake up to. Hi, Naomi.
Hello, Stormy.
Oh, my gosh. So we interviewed during it's
Yes.
still a pandemic, but we're
Yes.
socially distanced.
Yes.
I'm vaccinated, recently tested, as I continue to do. And I'm glad we're in the studio together. She has the best energy. I mean, seriously. Because
Thank
when
you.
you're in this, and
Yeah.
you're in politics and you have to be a certain way. And you were director of communications for the mayor
Yes.
of LA.
Yes.
Huge, 10 million people.
The county's 10 million people and the city is 4 million people. Correct?
Right.
Yes.
Utah as a state is 3.3.
Yes.
You
yes.
know?
I used to work for a senator from Montana. So I know.
Giddy up, girl.
Yes, 100%, sister.
Yeah. And so here we are today, and your life, when we spoke before, I watched your TED Talk. It's called How to Me Too, which it inspired me. So I want to talk about the TED Talk first, because it goes back to when you were a teenager, and it's 12 minutes and 3 seconds. Why we need to know, hashtag How to Me Too, worth the watch. And you exposed it was very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And I got really emotional because I think that most teenage girls have a story, whether, that's a rape story or an uncomfortable situation story that you can't get out of. And do you define it as rape or it's tough, but you ripped your Band-Aid off.
I did. I was raped 30 years ago when I was 17 and I was a senior in high school and he was a senior in college, and it was a seminal, obviously, event in my life, but I really kept it compartmentalized.
Yeah.
Yes, and I kept it in this crawl space in my head, and I really had a hard time integrating what had happened to me with how I expressed myself in the rest of my life. So what ended up happening to me is that there were 2 sides of me. There was the side that had these relationships with men, which were one thing, and then the other side where I was a fierce advocate for women. And I couldn't really cross-pollinate, sort of.
For other women.
For other women. So
but not yourself?
Exactly. I couldn't really advocate for myself. And when Christine Blasey Ford wrote to the Senate, so bravely wrote to the Senate about her horrific experience with now Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, something in me really clicked. And
What year was that?
so that
For
was
9 folks.
2018. And I thought, I'm going to write to that community college where my rapist works, because I had been in touch with him before, just once, and he was very anxious to talk to me, and I didn't talk with him, but I knew where he was
How long before?
at the height of Me Too. So in 2017 in the
yeah.
fall, I came home being out with some friends, and we'd been talking about it, and I went onto Facebook, and I found him, and I just looked at it, and I thought, oh my God, there he is with his family, and he's just moved on into this other life, and he got away with it. He got away with raping me. And I kept wondering if his wife knew he was a rapist.
Right.
And I thought, okay, there has to be some measure of accountability, but more than that, we just have to keep these kids safe that he's teaching. I felt very strongly like we have girls that were the age I was when I was raped that were in the classroom with this guy.
Right.
So that horrified me. And so I just all at once, it kind of, everything came flooding back to me. And I wrote a letter to the Title IX office at the community college.
What is the Title IX? What is that?
That just ensures that there's equal education for men and women. And so they deal with issues like assault and equal access to education. So, excuse me. So I wrote that letter, and the coordinator, she got back to me pretty quickly, and she just said, I was really, thank you for writing, and I don't know what we can do about this, but I appreciate it. I go, well, you at least need to keep it in the files in case something happened. And then I wrote her and I said, you know what, you need to share that with the president of the college, and you need to share it with HR. You need to share it with people who need to know. And then my TEDx talk goes more deeply into the kinds of actions I took, because I didn't stop there. I went pretty deep,
Right.
and I really, to the point where I did public records requests asking for the email that the president was exchanging with his board of directors and with my rapist, and I went pretty deep in. I have a history of working on accountability issues. I helped to run Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, and we brought down, former leader Tom DeLay, and and a whole range of folks. And so I had that skill set. I was really lucky that I'd had that skill set that I knew how to employ. But not everyone does.
Right. And you got to have the compass.
You do have to have the compass.
That's a tough thing to take on.
It's a lot to be, in this case, to be, both victim and advocate, right? And to really have some of the skills and savvy to know this, which I happened to know because I had done this as a living. And so the reason I did the TEDx talk is I thought, you shouldn't have to be famous, and your predator shouldn't have to be famous in order to get justice. Everyone deserves justice. Everyone deserves the tools to have justice. And so I wanted to take people along that path to understand that, like, we should be finding ways and tools and resources. And I said, talk to people I said, or call me. And you know what? A lot of people did.
You did say that. I loved that part.
And it was extraordinary how many people did reach out, that I knew and didn't know. And what was really, really touching to me, really stunning to me, is that there were women, and sad, there were women, who said, I was raped 50 years ago and I've never told anyone. I was raped 30 years. So I had these women coming to me, and men, by the way, coming to me saying, I've never told anyone. And people saying, what, I told my daughter what happened to me in high school. I told, pretty extraordinary conversations. And so
Yes.
I felt really honored, honestly, that people called to tell me, but it was also, it's a lot to take on. I've actually recently had trauma training so that I could make sure that I'm able to have the kinds of conversations with those in trauma that need to have it. Because I've, because it's out there, and I want to make sure that other people feel safe talking with me.
And what do you think that, is it society or is it female nature to hold this secret? Because, the more we learn about brains and trauma and how our brains will rewire to actually protect that hidden space that we go to.
Correct.
What is that? Was it society? Because we definitely aren't doing it anymore. We're starting to speak out. We're starting to, our daughters, the children that we have raised through, the Me Too for decades that was happening in society. And I think back on these moments. For me, I am so grateful that I was never raped. But there was a moment where I wanted to say no, and I didn't feel empowered.
Yeah.
So I go through life with that and going, what was that? Like, I did not want to have sex, but I did.
Yep.
And I didn't have the empowerment of saying no. My mom raised strong women. And, I think back to that. And as I get older, I wonder, is it society or because sex wasn't talked about in my household or guys thought they could do that? I'm not sure. Or I thought guys could do that.
I think it's a combination, right? So I think of course, it's society. Of course, by the way, there's still a stigma to it. There's still a stigma to say, I was assaulted, I was harassed, because they still are looking to find out, were you wearing the miniskirt? They're still looking to find out if what you did wrong to cause it. So I don't feel like that has wildly changed, to be honest. And, as we get into other topics, we can talk about how, again, we're experiencing this again and again and again. I was hopeful that Me Too would drastically change where we are, but I don't think it has. I think it has moved the needle, but we need to get in kind of this post Me Too period where we're not just telling stories, but we're taking action. And that is a place for us to go, and we're not there yet.
We've got a lot of catch up to do. So for you overcome this at 17. You learn to deal with it, suppress it, like so many women have. And because I wonder, is he sitting with regret? Does it bother him? Has he wanted to call and say sorry? You know what I mean?
What I will tell you is that I do know about this particular person. I read his email, and the first thing he did was get a lawyer. The first thing he did is say, it was kind of this Brett Kavanaugh redux. He said, well, I had a big lacrosse game the next day, so I couldn't have raped her because I had to go home early.
Oh, he remembers specifically.
He remembers that, and I thought, well, how do you remember that?
How do you remember that day?
You're just at some random party. How do you remember that day if you don't remember me and what happened? So it was extraordinary to read that. I don't know that I've ever been more angry in my life, because...
But more validated as well.
For sure. Completely validated, because he clearly knew what he did. But I also knew that he was never going to own up to it. In fact, when I considered talking to him,
right,
I talked to one of my best friends, and she said, well, let's role play it. And we role played it. And what I realized is that there was going to be no closure for me. That in fact, it was going to make me feel less than to talk to him. It would basically open up the wound and make me feel ashamed. And I just thought, I'm not doing that. I know what happened. I know what he did.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let him abuse me again. And so I didn't talk to him, and it was the right choice. It was the right choice. And because it was very uncomfortable for him as I was pushing.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I think that was right, and he should be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what he did, and he
Yes.
should be uncomfortable.
Yes. And that's where your story starts off for me in this moment. So I left Overstock.com in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks later, Megyn Kelly, I believe, for Fox News.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the beginning. It's
Yes.
like the summer of hashtag Me
Yeah.
Too.
Mm-hmm.
You navigate it, still navigating it very softly. And, Me Too can have a lot of different meanings. I feel like your moment is much more aggressive than a hashtag Me Too would be very hard to fight. Very hard to fight. And the brave ones that can and that do, is hats off to them. And I think that these types of movements open it up for everyone to start healing.
I think that's right. I think there's probably more we need to be doing for women and men to feel safe, speaking their truth and saying what's happened to them, and not feeling as though they will be punished for it. And I still feel, we look at what happened with Lindsay Boland and other women that came out to tell about their experience with Cuomo. They were doing Oppo research on her. They were looking for ways to embarrass her, to ruin her career, and not just her, right? So that's where we still are there. That just happened. We're still there.
You're right.
And I think what is jarring to me always is that these women that are their right-hand people, right? Cuomo's right-hand person was Melissa DeRosa. You look at someone like Weinstein, his right hand, these women were enabling.
Mm-hmm.
And what we don't talk about enough, and we will, is talk about enablers. And when it's a female enabler, there is something still very shocking to my system about it, and painful, that's what they're doing to other women.
It's systemic.
Correct.
Just like, and there's a moment, I like what you said about not being punished, because I feel like there's probably some men that would like to clear their conscience. You know what? They have to be. Mm-hmm. People have done things that they regret. Mm-hmm. And they have to have a forum to do that is rehabilitative.
Correct.
Because they've passed on. We all get our shit from our passing on of generations, our little quirks, our, nature versus where you live, whatever. But, they pass that on, whether they mean to or not, the way they treat women, their personal views. Mm-hmm. And so at some point we have to say, okay, we accept, how do we make sure we're talking about it so it's not passed on?
Well, I think the problem is the way, a lot of young men are raised. They're not raised to really talk about how they feel and talk about those impulses. And, I think we're almost like a step back from that. How do we actually raise? I have 2 boys and a daughter.
2 boys?
And so I have a 10-year-old and a 25-year-old. And, and my 10-year-old, he's a social justice warrior. He's spectacular.
Totally different, right?
He's spectacular. My 25-year-old's great too, but it's a really different thing. He's, he looks at the world and wants to figure out how to make it better. He says, when can we go to the Women's March again, Mommy? He feels it very deeply. And I don't think every boy needs to be raised like that. He just happens to be a very empathetic kid. But I also think instilling some of that and that empathy. And I think that's so key here, because we don't always teach boys to empathize with others.
To be soft.
Yes. But by the way, you don't even have to be soft.
Just
to feel what
feel.
others are
Yes.
feeling what others are feeling, right? And to look at someone and say, oh, they're in pain, right? And to understand that and be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah, empathy versus ego. That's a lot to take on with kids, because they have to be strong enough. You have to have a piece of ego to make it in this world.
Yes.
But you have to have the empathy so everyone makes it in this world.
Correct.
And that's a tough balance.
Yes.
I think more so for men.
Yeah, I think that's
Well,
fine.
systemically until
Systemically,
now. Like my
yeah.
boys too. They're in their 30s. They cry at sad commercials,
Yeah.
you know. I call it single mom syndrome.
Well, that's
You know.
probably right. But yeah. So I think anyway, I don't think there's a magic bullet here. But I do think that there is a lot we can do within a whole range of different sectors, whether it's the workplace, whether it's parenting, whether it's schools, and I feel like there's not enough of that coming together. Well, I mean, Stormy, what you were saying before, you did experience trauma. I feel like you downplayed that a little bit because you didn't call it quote unquote rape, but by the way, you had sex you didn't want to have. And so I think just helping women to understand having sex that you really didn't want to have, but you felt you couldn't say no to, is trauma.
Yes, I believe you're right. And I think the way I love humans. I love our actions and how we work. And I try to step out, because that's what we do, go to that place and say, like, what the heck? Why would I do that? Like, what was in my brain that I would actually let that go silently? I still don't know. I mean, I think back now and it's like, well, it was systemic. I was kind of in that situation, but I wasn't threatened. There wasn't violence. I wasn't, I just was silent.
And I think that is many, many, many women and men
Yes.
have had that very experience. And I just want to make sure that we validate that experience as trauma.
100%.
Right? That is trauma.
Thank you.
That is being violated. That is trauma because you didn't feel like you were empowered to say no. That's what it is. So I just want to say that out loud so people don't feel like they have to minimize that
I've never
experience.
shared this story till today.
Thank you for sharing it.
Oh, thanks for validating me.
Yeah.
Like, it's important as women and even as men. I mean, I have a lot of concern about my boys going out in the world and being able to just navigate it. Everybody just navigate it with love,
That's it.
It's just, that's it. It's that simple. It's that easy. I want to go on to your next lifetime, and I'm sure you had a few in between. So you went
Okay.
to work in politics, and you land eventually in the city of Los Angeles.
Correct.
And how did all that take place? How did you get appointed to work with Eric?
So I lived in LA for a few years. I'd moved here from DC, where I'd been for a decade and a half. So I came here, and there was a man, and I had my own firm, and I was working with progressive causes, and it was great. I was doing gender equity and gun control and
right.
a lot of work around immigration. Things I really deeply
Really
care
good
about.
work, by the way, you guys.
Things that I care about, things that I think matter in the world, and a guy named Rick Jacobs, who I had met several years earlier because my husband had covered Prop 8, had covered the campaign years before.
Tried to fight it.
Yes, and so he covered it, and this guy named Rick Jacobs, had tried to recruit me into a job. He was the founder of a group called Courage Campaign, and a few friends had sort of warned me off him, and they just said, I don't know, I've had some tough experiences with him, and I had just left DC, and there was a lot of, I dealt with a lot of toxicity there, and I just thought,
I can take
no,
it.
I you know what, I got things to do in the world. So about 5 years later, Rick Jacobs calls me and says, I have a job for you. And I was like, well, luckily I have a job. And he said, no, I have a really good job for you. And I said, okay, what is it? And he said, I think you should be communications director for the mayor. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know that I want to go back into politics. I don't.
Right.
And it became this whole recruiting sort of.
You can't say no.
It really, in the end, and there were a lot of reasons I said yes. One of them being that
Great
it was a
opportunity.
great opportunity. I also was very new to LA, And I really wanted to understand the city. You know, a lot of my clients were still in DC or in New York, and so I didn't feel integrated into the city. And I felt like, well, there's not really a better way to learn LA than to be in the Valley of the Beast.
That's right.
I didn't know how true that would be, but so I did do it, and in a lot of ways, it was an extraordinary experience. You know, I felt that Eric, like ideologically, I was aligned with him. I felt like his heart was in the right place when I was interviewing with him. You know, it just seemed like the right kind of person. And I became very close with a number of people in that administration, like very close, people I deeply loved. But there was also Rick Jacobs who was there. And he, I watched as he sexually harassed and abused scores of people.
Okay, so Rick Jacobs, I'm sure if you Google him, there's a lot of Rick Jacobs in the world. So Courage Campaign was what he was working on. Founding, was he kind of a political guy the whole time? Where did he come from?
He came from working for Occidental Oil. He worked with oligarchs in Russia many years ago. And so he was well-connected, well-moneyed. And he, you know, in LA, he actually ran Dean's campaign in California when Dean was running for president.
Howard Dean.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so he really, really grew into this LA political world and realized power was the way to go. And so he got connected up, and he latched on to the mayor's wife, Amy Elaine Wakeland, who he ended up doing a lot of work with. And as the mayor's campaign was getting going, he established an independent expenditure for the mayor, raised a lot of money for him.
How do you think this happened so quick? Like, we talk about things systemically. Here's some guy, Rick Jacobs, walking around, running around Russia, doing his stuff, working in oil, and then all of a sudden, placed in just this unbelievable position. That's where, when I say systemic and politics, it's like, I don't really, like, how does it all happen?
He had access to money.
Yeah, just all the money.
It really was about, he had access to donors and to money and to Hollywood. And the mayor was very interested in that access. And so he looked at, I believe, looked at Rick as sort of his ticket.
The easy way in.
100%.
It's easy to get it done.
100%.
Everybody hires somebody.
And so he did that.
And what year was that?
So the mayor was elected to office. Eric was elected to office in 2013 and became mayor of Los Angeles. And Rick Jacobs became deputy chief of staff. And
same time.
Yeah, he brought him in. And his chief of staff was a woman named Ana Guerrero, who had been with him for many, many years. And Rick, was just a tyrant there, right? He had his fiefdom.
I read that he made up his own title, like executive vice president, or mayor, or what was it?
Yes, he made up his own title because he said that the Chinese and other cultures would better understand his stature and standing in the office if he had a different title. And so he kind of just added that to his signature.
That's some ego right there. Like, as long as the people of Los Angeles understand it, he should have been happy.
That's 100%. So, but he really liked, I went to some of those, those dinners at the consul with him, and he loved being important in that way. And that importance, he used to his benefit to abuse women and men. He was a predator.
So rumor is he's, it doesn't matter one way or the other what his sexual preference is.
He's gay.
He is gay, but he was abusing.
He was an equal opportunity
He
abuser.
doesn't even consider himself bisexual. Like, that's where I'm just kind of stuck.
But it's not
It's
about.
like, you're not gay. You are a predator of humans.
That's okay.
Just stop. I looked him up. I know. I'm sorry. I am.
So no, he did not use this time. But what he did do is used his power against me. These are power moves. When people do the kinds of thing he does, it's not about what sex someone is, and it's certainly not about sex. It is about power. He kissed me, and then, 2 weeks later, he kissed my husband in front of me. And my husband had known him for over a dozen years, and he said that in all that time, he'd never done that. But what Rick did is he kissed my husband and then looked over at me.
Right, in front of you.
Right in front of me, and just was like, I can do anything I want in front of you.
Right.
Even kiss your husband. I have power over you. And that's who he is. And he did, far worse things than that, and did, and was really just a bully in the office, and what I've been talking about is the mayor knew. Eric Garcetti knew who Rick was. He witnessed, tolerated, and enabled Rick Jacobs' behavior.
Okay, so this incident happens in your office in front of your staff. It's humiliating.
It's
people, so folks, even Christine Blasey Ford, because everybody's sitting at home watching stuff, listening to stuff, and then you go to your friends like, oh, well, why wouldn't you come forward? Whatever the reasons, right? And I mean, everyone had different conversations, and good, because that's what it's meant to do. Wake us up, get us really talking. They knew. Her saying, I'm at work, and I'm in my office, and I'm a powerful woman with a title, just like all the men, and politics are different, and everybody just better believe that shit right now. These political men are different. And someone grabs you and kisses you against your will, you're not given any kind of consent, that is offensive. It's not just a sentence. It is a violation of your fucking space. And it's that big of a deal. So it comes off quick because it's just a sentence. But think about that. Think about that. You're in your space and someone just comes. And then what does that do forever? It's different forever. Everybody that saw it, it's different. You live your life that way. You start, it just establishes a way that, I kind of want to say it's like he goes and pisses in the yard or something, like a dog might go, Mark.
That is correct. That is,
it's kind of that
correct.
Innate, or
correct. It's sexual battery. So let's just be clear on what it is.
Yes.
What he did to me.
Yes.
Right? It's not just an invasion of my space. It's sexual battery. It is actually against the law, what he did to me.
Right.
And he also did it in front of my staff.
He
did it purposefully.
And then to do it with your husband, that is exactly what he's doing. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
So this guy's running around advising someone that's in charge of 4 million people, and maybe he's smart. Maybe he does a good job there. I can't judge him, but Eric knows, and his benefit to his career is to allow it to happen, because that's why I wanted to say, how did Rick Jacobs get in? What was it that made Garcetti allow it? And I'll tell you what it is, because as of February 7th of 2022, and this article, I actually don't know where it's at, but Los Angeles Times, I'll tell you what. President Biden nominated Eric Garcetti last July to be the ambassador to India on all of our behalf. And that's a true story. So when you wonder what Rick Jacobs did for Garcetti and why it was tolerated, something's there, right? Because he still went on to succeed. And I'll tell you, everybody listening, research it. She's not alone. This was an environment in an office that runs a big city in our country that was tolerated, allowed. And there's pictures online of the dude, Rick, with his hands on people. It's disgusting.
Well, let me clear about this timeline. So, the mayor was expected to be part of the Biden's cabinet. So he really was expected to have a much bigger job. But what happened in the summer of 20 is that one of the mayor's protective detail, who was an LAPD officer, filed suit against the city. And he filed suit against the city because of the inappropriate touching and sexual harassment that he endured during his years serving the mayor. And who did he endure it from? From Rick Jacobs. And so he really opened this Pandora's box because, that office, the Garcetti's office, I often talk about it like a culture of omerta, because it really was, you are family. You only hang out with family. You only speak with family. And you keep secrets in the family. And this was one of the family secrets. It was an open secret because it's not that,
right.
But you did not talk about it. And the fact that this was filed, that this complaint was filed, it really was like a hurricane through the administration. And I knew that I could no longer stay silent. So, but what happened was, so several months later, Biden is elected. Biden, is nominating folks for the cabinet. The story comes out with that you talked about, with a photo of the mayor inches from Rick Jacobs' hand holding a man's genitals. And he does not get that appointment.
Oh, that was the photo. That's
the timing.
Got it.
There were also a lot of other incredible things happening right then. Black Lives Matter LA was protesting at the mayor's house every single day for, I believe, 23 days, right around that time as well. So there was a lot of pressure. So he doesn't get that. But he had also endorsed Biden very early on. He was fourth in Nevada when he endorsed Biden. And then he was, co-chair of the campaign, and he was co-chair of the inaugural committee. And he also was part of the committee that was selecting the vice president. So he was part of all of these different decision-making bodies around the campaign. And my understanding is that Biden felt very loyal to him, feels very loyal to him. And when he couldn't give him the cabinet post, they then nominated him last summer, the day after my deposition in that lawsuit was published. The day after, they nominated him. And
it was the day after?
The day after it was reported. And I was really one of the first people to tell the truth and tell the whole unvarnished truth. And I was certainly the first victim beyond Garza to talk about what had happened to me and to talk about how everyone kept it quiet and worked to keep it quiet.
And now what are they doing?
So
not responding. Are they talking out loud?
No. I mean, here's where we are. So at this point, I think we've had, probably 20 people have been deposed. And there is a division between those who told the truth and those who did not. And those of us that told the truth no longer work for Mayor Garcetti. And a lot of those that haven't work for him and have stayed within that, they have chosen loyalty over courage. And so what's happening now is that the mayor was nominated.
Or career.
I mean, listen, it's career, it's network, they've never lived anywhere else.
Right.
LA is their world. And they don't want to lose that. And I understand not wanting to lose it. I do not understand lying under oath to protect a predator. That is unfathomable to me.
I don't either. Why can't they just say it happened?
They won't do it. I mean, there are depositions in which some of these staffers say, I can't recall, up to 43 times. There are, these are people, some of the people I hired, people that I was really close with, who have just have lied under oath. And that includes the mayor, who is absolutely, so I retained whistleblower aid about a month ago, and Whistleblower Aid is an extraordinary organization that represents whistleblowers. They represent the Facebook whistleblower and the Ukraine whistleblower and, some extraordinary people. And they filed a disclosure letter on my behalf which went through all of the depositions and all of the ways that the mayor and his staff had, witnessed and been untruthful about what they had seen and known. And they sent that letter to a number of investigative bodies, including, the DA of Los Angeles and the State Department and the AG's office and a lot of different bodies, and to investigate and figure out, is he guilty of felony perjury? And that's definitely what it alleges.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he is. And it's been a very painful
You wouldn't
road.
fight this hard if you didn't believe he was. But why would he protect that dude? Rick Jacobs is his name, everybody. Why is he protected?
There's a lot of reasons. Some of them being that Rick was extraordinarily close to the mayor's wife, and they really had a codependency between them.
Did they have an affair?
No, he's gay.
Did he have an affair with Garcetti?
We don't know.
I will ask that question instead of you. But I mean, come on.
We don't-
What
we don't-
is it?
we
There's there
don't-
a secret? What's the tie? Why wouldn't you just say yes? This guy was handsy as hell. He was always a wild factor, but you know what? He did a good job. Admit something.
He
Admit
had
it.
an opportunity. So Eric did have an opportunity to do that. Mm-hmm. Eric Garcetti had, many opportunities to say this is inappropriate, especially, by the way, as one of his pillars of his administration was supposedly gender equity. This is the issue that his wife, Amy Elaine Wakeland, touts day in and day out. They would talk about, well, we established a Me Too office. Well, we have a women and girls conference. We have, this is...
Yeah, don't do it because it's cool.
Well, and
Do it because you're doing it.
right. And it's, it's just putting a little bit of lipstick, right, on that administration, literally. And so what we saw is that he was doing that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, he was enabling this predator. And so, what we're seeing, and what I'm seeing as I go through this, is that there's a lot of folks who are doing very similar things that they're talking out both sides of their mouth. For example, as you know, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I worked in the House and the Senate for Democrats. I have worked for progressive issues my entire life. I voted for President Biden. President Biden, who had his own challenges around Anita Hill and, and has apologized, not to her, but has apologized.
Only when they're caught.
He urged Governor Cuomo to resign. And then, in the same breath, he nominated Eric Garcetti to become ambassador to India. So you either live your values or you don't. And living your values means you have a through line with everything you do.
That's right.
And there is no through line there. And I find that offensive. And I work really hard for this party, and I feel like they have let us down.
That's right. It's a slippery slope these politicians are playing, because their history will be written, and every one of these things are going to come back. And that's where it's like, what's the loyalty? Is it money? Is it secrets? Is it, and why is it always in politics?
Yeah, I think it's probably not always in politics, right?
It seems like they're always in some good boys club. I'm sorry. It just is.
I think, but I think what's really disappointing, especially in politics, is that they are making policy and talking a very good game about policy that will protect women, that will empower women. But then, when it says, "Well, we don't want to upset Biden. We're not going to vote against this guy," he made it through. So in December, he had his hearing, his nomination hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And in January, they voted him out unanimously, Democrats and Republicans. And now he is on, the docket to be voted on. And let me just tell you, it only takes one senator to put a hold on his nomination. One senator. So I'm asking right now that there be one senator who takes a deeper look, says we need to hold.
Well, they need to know what they're doing there. Like, here's the thing. Are you there to make friends and make sure you don't upset somebody? Or are they in the Senate to walk the line for their constituents? Walk the line for them. You're speaking for a group of people from the Senate. What do they want? What do they think? And how do they represent them? They go in and it's like, we don't want to upset Biden. Well, I'm sorry, but you got to wake him up first.
I think to me, it's very painful to have written to these senators.
Right.
And
you wrote to them. I
did write
that.
to them.
Yeah,
I wrote a letter to them last year, and to write to them and say, listen, here's the evidence, right? Here's the evidence. I need you to know. And whistleblower has also, been talking with senators as well. But this is a moment where it tests your mettle. This is a moment where you say, okay, I'm going to live my values.
What if he owns it? What if Garcetti comes up and says, I own it. You're right. I lied about it. You're right. He's an asshole. I did it. And I want to change my ways, but owns it.
He'll be prosecuted for felony perjury.
Maybe they go easy on him because he stepped forward as, to get his compass straight.
He's been lying for so long and so often. He lied under oath twice. Not once. He lied under oath.
And once they do
court,
that, they can't undo it.
And then he lied to the senators. So brazenly. Lied to senators to their faces. So to me, he's had an opportunity to do that. And great if he wants to apologize. It would be great if he did that and owned it. I'm not holding out.
He won't.
I'm not holding my breath for that. But I feel like what I want people to take away from it is that when you do the kinds of things he's done, and a lot of people have been hurt, right? This is not a victimless crime here. A lot of people have been hurt. That there are ways to stand up. There are ways to stand up, and people will back you. Not everyone, but there are ways to stand up. And I feel like that's what I want people to come away with. And if you want to call your senator and say, you should put a hold on this nomination until they investigate more, that would be great, right? We need folks to be able to feel empowered.
We are constituents. It is our job to call our senators, to get them in check. I don't know how the same ones keep getting elected personally, but it's our job. That's what's running for office did for me. I realized my importance as a voter, my importance as someone that should be taking check of what our senators are doing, because the laws that are even happening in your own state legislature, just kind of getting by because they're not telling everyone, you may not agree with. It feels so like moments of helplessness. It's like, okay, all this happened, and then he's gone on to be going to go be an ambassador of India. Like, how should he possibly get rewarded for this?
Well, failing up happens often, especially with white men. So we know that to be the case. But what I will say, this is a much longer conversation, but we know the amount of money and access in politics changes the dynamics of those that can be in there, right? And so we understand that. And those are the kinds of things that need to change. That's why Rick Jacobs had so much power. And let me just note also, I want our president to succeed. I want him to succeed. But part of succeeding is being able to admit that you made a mistake. Mm-hmm. And maybe he didn't know what he needed to know about Eric Garcetti when he nominated him, but he knows now. And I will just tell you one note, that the day that Eric was nominated an LA Times reporter called the White House and said, hey, what about this sexual harassment suit? Like, what do you guys think of that? And they said, well, Eric said he never witnessed it, so we believe him. And I thought, so you believe him at face value, but what about the victims? No one came to ask me what I thought, and I, and I'd written them. They saw my deposition. I hadn't written them at that point, but they'd seen my deposition. And can you imagine? I was so deflated. I just thought, what? Why did my president just betray
Disregard.
me and disregard these victims? Because again, it's not about believing or not believing. It's what about the other people who were hurt in this process? And we just didn't matter. And then they repeated it in a New York Magazine story in December called The Mayor Knew.
Yes.
And that the White House repeated it.
Good.
And I will say, interestingly enough, when Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, was asked about this, my complaint, last week, she said, well, we don't plan on rescinding any nominations, and any comment, you need to talk to Mayor Garcetti's office. So I thought it was interesting that they weren't defending
They bury it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's the whole, under the Clinton administration, something happened in the news world where you could give your commentary versus direct, actual, factual news. You could provide commentary. And in that, they just don't talk about it, and then no one talks about it. But if, a news station does their job, like these reporters are doing, these New York Magazine, LA Times, how do they get CNN to take it if they don't want to upset Biden? Where is the sellout between Garcetti and Biden? Because I think there is one. I think that everybody's shaking each other's hands and made a promise of what your kid's going to do or your kid's going to do or whatever they do in politics. It's already there. And if it's not Biden, it's someone that controls Biden. And control is the word I mean. Because it doesn't make sense. And especially in this culture where all the politicians want to be perfect. Like, oh, how'd you grow up perfect? I managed to make mistakes all along the way. Some I'm really ashamed of, but I still made them.
Sure.
How'd they grow up perfect? How'd everybody get so damn perfect for so long? And there's someone along the way that's making sure they stay perfect, Jen Psaki. Oh, yeah, well, we don't know. Well, how about you scratch just a little bit? How about the way that they start leading is with courage to break through all of these weird things that they do? Because to me, it's a sellout somewhere along the way. Like, really, you can't find another ambassador to India? What promise did you make?
Yeah, I mean, what I understand is that President Biden feels very loyal to Eric Garcetti.
He needs to be loyal to 300 million people. 4 million under Eric's rule here in Los Angeles. Doesn't matter. He doesn't get loyal. He's the one person that has to operate from facts. You don't get to be loyal to anybody. You want to be loyal to one guy? Well, who did I vote in?
I'd like him to be loyal to the victims.
I'd like him to be loyal to the country. And that means holding people accountable, not making them leaders.
That's right.
Man, I'm making them leaders.
Yeah, it's very disappointing. Mm-hmm. It's very disappointing.
So as far as we've come with Me Too and standing up and doing all that, we're still breaking through it. And it takes a lot. Like what you're taking on is a job. That's work.
It is a job. Mm-hmm. It is. It's hard. I'm an accountability and communications consultant, and it's very hard when you decide that you're going to stand up to the most powerful person in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. It's been a gut-wrenching experience. It is not, being a whistleblower is not for the faint of heart.
100%. 100%. And the more that, you say and go out there, the more they disregard, the more power it takes to push through them. And it's going to take a village. I mean, everyone listening, guys, girls, whatever. It's like, regardless of whether Garcetti meant well, didn't mean well, turned another eye, didn't, he stepped into a leader's job, which means accountability, just like you're saying. Own it. But if you're getting a job in India because Biden's loyal to you, I'm already suspect. If you can't acknowledge what your staff act like in front of everyone, I'm already suspect.
Well, again, let me just note, too, what I didn't say is that after Rick Jacobs kissed me, I did go to my chief of staff's office, Ana Guerrero, and I said to her, "You won't believe what just happened to me." I was horrified and I was upset. And she just looked at me, stony-eyed, sort of rolled her eyes, and just said, "Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it." And that's how I was treated when I reported being assaulted. So even when you can do it and it's brushed off, right? It takes a lot to have to
By a woman.
come back. By a woman, by the way, by a very powerful woman.
And that's the question. What is it? There's something. Like, why can't you just say, yeah, the guy's an asshole. I'll go talk to him right now. It's unacceptable.
And it's beyond that. She now has lied and said that I didn't go into that office.
Anna, what does he have on her? Like, you know what I mean? If they don't,
It really is. She prizes loyalty above anything in a very
but
mafioso
loyalty
way.
to what? Loyalty to what? A guy
To herself and her career,
that,
above
money
anything.
and opportunities.
Yes. So it's, and I will tell you, Anna and I were very close. It was very painful to me. It's very painful. This whole thing's been very painful. But I knew it's a lot less painful than looking at myself in the mirror and doing nothing.
That's right.
It's just not. I couldn't do that.
It's coming, folks.
Yep.
It's coming, as it should be. And I know for myself, like even sharing today, something like I've got my own shit that we work through, and I will. The more that people like you make it safe I love our country. I love, a two-party, all the things. I don't love our politicians. I really don't like what they've done with our Constitution and their ability to think that they're in charge when they may be elected, but we're in their care. And be in charge, running around, protecting each other, loyalty to your fellow senator. No. It's about running a country that has to sustain another few thousand years. And these guys are focused on a very short goal, and it's their lifetime.
It is their lifetime.
Yeah, wake the fuck up. Senators, everybody voting. It is time for us to wake the fuck up. Brett Kavanaugh is on our Supreme Court. What the fuck? We talk about in Texas that women can't get abortions. What the fuck? Seriously, wake the fuck up. Where do you want to be in 30 years? In Afghanistan, women in Afghanistan, the way they're treated right now, it's that type of shit, ladies, and we have got to shake it up. And you know what? If they want to keep selling out, I'll keep working outside of their goddamn system. I'm an American. You know what? We have just as much space on this earth as Joe Biden or Trump as individuals. Don't work for Instagram. Work for your zip code. Oh, makes me so mad. Yeah. Damn it.
I like it. It's great.
What else are you doing? I know you are Tower 26, right?
Tower 26 agency. So I work with people doing good in the world, but really those that are seeking accountability is what I'm focused on. I've been working with an incredible comedian named Mona Sheikh, who's Muslim American, has a Minority Report's Desi Girl out, incredible show. And so she has been really exposing the kinds of sexual harassment and abuse that run rampant in the comedy world. So we've been working together to help to bring some accountability there. And I have a podcast coming out soon
Yay.
too, and it will be called How to Me Too.
Oh my God, I'm coming on.
And
I'm inviting myself right
so
now.
You're on, sister. And so that's stay tuned. That's coming out soon. I'm very excited about it, and it's going to be literally the tools and resources anybody needs in order to take action. I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to, through my story, have experts on. Lawyers, advocates, therapists to talk about what do you need to do to get the kind of justice that you deserve.
Right. And you said it today. You said you were a victim to me.
Yep.
And it's like, oh God, you're right.
Yes. Correct.
You're right.
Yes.
No matter what that was, you can say, oh, well, was she raped? She didn't fight and kick. Well, I've said that actually out loud about women.
Yes.
But was it rape if she wasn't fighting? Like, I would fight, I would hit, I would kick. And then it's like, oh, yeah, I remember that one memory I buried. I didn't fight or kick. I didn't know what to do.
Exactly. Right. And I think women deserve to be able to know what to do and how to think in those situations and to prepare themselves. And by the way, and not to blame themselves.
That's what I was going to say. And not be horrified that we're such, I don't know what it is either. The emotions, like, I don't want to deal with it. It could get ugly. I could get, it's too much. I guess it's easier to get through it.
Yeah, no, I think all of that. So, I'm really excited about that and being able to help to build a community that can support each other in this endeavor. So that's exciting. So yeah, I have a lot of really interesting, exciting, exhausting.
Yeah, leading a lot
work.
of women.
Yes,
it's
a lot, but it's really rewarding. There have been people, even in the Garcetti, that have called me and just said, "Thank you. I can't be public, but thank you for doing what you're doing."
Garcetti, just own your shit. Just do it. But it's not a big deal. I won't cancel you, Eric. I swear to God, I won't cancel you. I'll interview you. Just own it. And Rick, I am canceling you. Rick Jacobs,
Yes.
You are canceled.
Yes.
You are. He's a piggish guy about him. I know it's probably, it'll all come out in court. I guess. Not a fan of Brett Kavanaugh still.
No.
I don't care what they did to Christine Blasey Ford, who, by the way, is a psychologist of trauma. Like, she spent her life, I believe, right? Isn't her background in some sort of psychology?
Yeah, she's done a lot of research, and she's an expert.
To live with it.
Yeah.
She spent years of her life educating so she can live with this.
Yeah.
And I want to thank her for throwing herself in front of that train. Because
she's a hero. Mm-hmm. She's a hero.
Yeah.
She really is.
Even though he sits there.
She's still a hero. But that's not.
And so are
and
you.
I'll just say also that's not whether they make it. Like, their success is not our failure. Their success is not our failure. So when someone makes it to their goal, it doesn't mean we failed, because we exposed, we held them to account, we fought, we empowered other people. All of those things matter greatly. And just because they reached some goal,
right.
It doesn't mean what we did doesn't matter, because it does.
I'm going to end on that. And it does.